So you're constantly on calls trying to communicate with the team. And it was not just my team. It was a cross-functional effort, right? So it was my team, and then there was the development team that we had to constantly talk to. And then there is on-site stakeholders, then there is stakeholders internally that you have to manage and make sure that constantly you're giving the reassurance to your management saying that, yes, we are on track no matter.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the esteemed FaceTime with Leaders, an initiative by World Development Corporation. I'm Sunny Pancholi, anchor at World Development Corporation. FaceTime with Leaders is a platform for industry titans to share their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices in order to inspire one another and future leaders. We have one such highly acclaimed name on FaceTime with Leaders with us today, Ms.Pruthvi Basavesh. She is a skilled professional with a rich and diverse background in the information technology industry, specializing in the HRM ERP domain. With an impressive 17 years of experience, she has demonstrated expertise in various facets of HRM, including North American payroll systems, agile best practices, HCM-centered user experience, business analysis, and software development lifecycle management. At present, she is giving her invaluable service to CGI in the position of Associate Consultant. Welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, Ms. Pruthvi.
Thank you.
So to begin with over 14 years of experience at CGI, could you elaborate on your journey to your current position?
Sure enough. So like you touched upon in the introduction, right? I started off as a fresh graduate back in 2006, right after my master's. And so initially my role was that of an associate business analyst. And it has been close to about 18 years since I started off my career at CGI. And throughout, I have been in a functional role. So I started off as an associate, and then I went on to become a team lead, and then moved on to become a delivery manager, right? And in between, I also was a Scrum Master and a product owner when CGI embraced Agile methodologies, right? So it has given me in-depth knowledge of how the IT industry works and what it takes to stay on top of it and to have a cutting edge over your peers and the next gen. And also, I've had the privilege of working for one of the biggest names in the North American payroll system, which is, like you said, Advantage. Not many have heard of Advantage, but the moment I name some of our competition in the US, like SAP and Oracle's PeopleSoft, Workday, Salesforce, they are our biggest competitors. So I think that has taught a lot in the last 18 years or so. Uh, my last role was that of a subject matter expert, where I dealt with the IRS. IRS in the US is equivalent to probably the income tax department here in India, right? So IRS comes up with these new rules and regulations, and I had to interpret them for my team to take it forward, make those changes, and we dealt with US tax forms and all the compliance related stuff around US taxes. So that was my last role, and it has been a great journey so far.
Ms. Prithvi, thank you for the excellent start to this interview. So continuing our conversation, what do you consider to be your biggest professional achievement or contribution?
My biggest professional achievement, rather than putting it in terms of millions of dollars of projects and things like that, I think I would say being able to stay relevant, right? So as when you start off as a fresh graduate, back in the early 2000s to where we are today, software industry is evolving at a very rapid pace, right? So every 6 months or 3 months, there's probably a new technology coming in, and you have to be able to upskill yourself, constantly keep a track of where you stand and what is it that takes in terms of skill to upskill yourself and to stay relevant, right? I think that is what offers you that competitive edge over your peers or even the Gen Z that is coming in, right? So being able to stay relevant across decades, I think, is one of the biggest achievements today, I would say, in a drastically changing landscape. And my biggest contribution, like you asked, I think is being able to create clones. When I say clones, not literally my copies, but being able to provide that mentorship, right? If I've spent 18 odd years, then I've learned a great deal in the industry, in the organization, right? So how do I inculcate those values in somebody that I'm training who's just joined, right? So I think that has been my biggest contribution. I've been part of some of the initiatives in the organization where you come up with great newcomer buddy system, like how do you make sure there is minimal gap between what is taught in colleges to what is relevant in the industry, right? How do you minimize the gap, and then how do you make them really productive at a faster pace, because organizations invest so much in hiring new recruits, right? So that has been I think a great contribution.
That sounds incredible. So building on to that, could you provide an example of a particularly challenging project you have managed and how you navigated through it?
I mean, this takes me back to about a decade, right? So like I said, our clients are typically the state and the local governments in the United States. So back in 2014, there was this really challenging project that we had to implement, and it was like 50 plus enhancement that we had to deliver in a time frame of probably say 2 years. So 2 years seems like a lot, but trust me, it is not when you're working under strict SLAs. Software projects come with strict SLAs, right? And there's a huge penalty involved if you do not deliver within the agreed upon time and so on and so forth. So to begin with itself, there is this constant pressure of timeline. And I was the functional lead at that point, and my team was really sporadically set out, meaning there were people working from Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, Bangalore, various locations. So communicating itself was a challenge, right? Different locations. So you're constantly on calls trying to communicate with the team. And it was not just my team. It was a cross-functional effort, right? So it was my team, and then there was the development team that we had to constantly talk to. And then there is on-site stakeholders, then there is stakeholders internally that you have to manage and make sure that constantly you're giving the reassurance to your management saying that, yes, we are on track no matter how difficult the project is, how challenging the timelines are. You have to give that reassurance through giving them reports saying, yeah, today we've delivered so many XYZ deliverables, if we are on track, and so on and so forth. And the other big challenge was how to keep the team motivated, right? I mean, we worked for probably 4 months without any weekend breaks. So maintaining motivation of the team so as to not impact the quality of the work that they're delivering, right? That was another big challenge to constantly keep them motivated. And at times we had to take unconventional ways, not prescribed in the textbooks, like going out on a lot of these tea breaks, right? That actually helped. I think a lot of times we kind of downplay the impact a 10-minute informal tea break can have on the whole team, because that is what brought the team together. And we would even have birthday celebrations right at our desk because we didn't have the time to go out on lunch breaks or have dinner parties and things like that. So that really brought the team together, and we all felt like we were working towards a common cause. And it didn't feel like stress, though we worked together on weekends for 4 months, at the end of it, of course, it was not a very smooth delivery, I would say, but I think what significantly I learned was, no matter what the situation is, to keep your personal emotions out of it and treat work like work, right? Eventually, when I look back at it, now it just feels so irrelevant, right? We all have moved on with our lives, and what happened back then was just a small part of our lives. So I think that was the key takeaway. Keep your emotions out of work, treat work just like work, and your team members like your colleagues without trying to dominate your younger peers. I think that's all that it takes. And those are some of the key learnings that I've had.
Amazing, Ms. Prithvi. All right, so tell me this one thing: working in the business analysis domain and then serving as a product owner, how
Yeah.
did you develop your interest in ESG and corporate governance?
Yeah, there's a small story associated to it. So even before I did my master's, I have done my bachelor's in law. So I have a law degree, right? So somehow I did want to become an advocate, but back in early 2000s, IT was the boom. That was the thing. And having a corporate job looked very lucrative. So that is why I pursued my master's without really going into practicing advocacy. And at a point, even I wanted to become a company secretary, right? So even back then, somehow I was fascinated with boardrooms, and boardrooms, I believe, are the powerhouses of any corporate world, right? Any organization to do well needs to have a really strong corporate governance, and that comes only from having a strong boardroom. So that has always drawn me. And so I always think of boardrooms like the mitochondria. Mitochondrias are like the powerhouse cells, right? So similarly, boardrooms, and being able to be part of that boardroom and as a woman representative, I think that gives you a sense of power, right? For all the right reasons. And also being able to play the role of an independent director is like playing the devil's advocate. So the advocate genes is still somewhere there in me, and I think that is what has always drawn me to corporate governance and ESG world.
Okay. So, as an ESG and corporate governance expert, what values do you bring to the table?
Uh, so when I think about ESG, right, initially when I look at it 2 decades back, when I joined the corporate world, there would be something called as CSR initiative, right? Back then, companies would probably over the weekend have their employees to volunteer, and they would have them plant maybe about 100 odd saplings and paint walls of government schools, and then say, hey, we're done with the CSR initiative for the year, right? And that seemed, when you look at it 2 decades ago and where we are today, post COVID, I think there's a drastic paradigm shift to the whole ESG landscape, right? What was viewed back then as a compulsive way of trying to spend 2% of the corporate profit today has evolved into shaping a company's brand. The way people look at an organization that has a really strong ESG manifesto, I think is what differentiates organizations from their competition, right? And I think that is where people like me play a pivotal role if given a chance in the boardroom, right? Bringing in that fresh thinking mindset and helping organizations realize how much of a potential a strong ESG manifesto can actually bring about in building their brand, right? Today, because of the importance that ESG has gained, all companies do, send out these annual ESG reports. But how many of them are really impactful, right? Because people today do pay attention to reading each and every sentence in ESG report. right? What is it that my company is doing? So I have invested in a particular XYZ company. What is it that they're doing to probably reduce the carbon footprint, right? Like companies today are talking about net zero emission. So if I have a long-term plan of say by 2030, my organization has to go completely carbon neutral. So what is it that I'm doing today that will help me achieve that goal in the next 5 years or 10 years, right? And I think that is where, people like me or who have similar mindsets would help organizations think in that direction. The thought leadership, I think, is what matters. And like buzzwords like impact investing or something like climate risk disclosure today, manufacturing industries can no longer brush under the carpet what is the climate impact they have. They need to learn to be upfront about it, right? So of course there's a climate impact, but you have to acknowledge it and try to work towards bringing it down year on year. I think that is what matters. And like I said, thought leadership is what I bring to the table when ESG matters. And talking about corporate governance, I think, like I said, playing the role of a devil's advocate, I've always been quite vocal about asking questions. And in a boardroom, I think that is what matters, right? Constantly questioning the board's decision, not to nag, but actually to ensure that the decisions are in everybody's favor, especially for the shareholders and your other stakeholders, right? That it is just and ethical for everybody. I think having a voice is what matters, and always looking at good corporate governance examples, say Microsoft Corporation, when you talk about at a world level, right? It is supposed to be one of the best organizations, like corporate governance. And in the Indian context, of course, the Tata Group is there when it comes to corporate governance. So following in similar footsteps, right? Really being transparent and upfront about your financial reports, decisions, so as to bring value to people who believe and trust in your organization. I think that is the value add.
Absolutely. Rightly said, Ms.Pruthvi. All right, so let's move ahead and let's discuss technology and its impact on your professional landscape. So
Mhm.
here is the question to you. What are some ways you want to see technologies like IoT, AI, ML, blockchain, big data, digital twin, cloud, Web 3.0 leverage your industry?
I think there are a lot of buzzwords packed into that one question. I think I will take a few minutes to talk about maybe just a couple of them, right? Because there are so many great examples of all these great technologies. But a couple of my favorites. So I will start with IoT. Right. So when I say IoT, it feels like, oh, okay, I'm talking about a buzzword. But today, everybody, almost say 90+% of at least the urban population is invariably part of IoT with or without their knowledge. So we all have smartwatches today. We all have smartphones, smart TVs, right? And even smart refrigerators. So each of these personal devices talking to each other, having the ability to communicate amongst themselves to create that ecosystem itself is what IoT is in simple terms, right? And if we have to think about realistic use cases in the ESG world, some of the use cases are like especially in the manufacturing industry, let's say, or say in the mining industry, right? So when we talk about wearables that have the capacity to say monitor and track temperatures or say extreme gases and things like that, right? Which matters to the safety of the floor workers or people who are working in that hazardous environment. So if organizations are able to invest in such innovative technology, I think that would really help in providing a safer work experience and environment for these workers, right? That is one use case. The other one, of course, is when you talk about remote operated devices like drones, right? In the agriculture industry, for example, Today, you see a lot of farmers, the Gen Z farmers who are YouTubers, making a lot of money, and not just making money, also providing that knowledge and gaining knowledge from these YouTube videos on how to farm and things like that. So these guys can rent out remote operated drones to, probably spray fertilizers on crops, or even to monitor. Like in villages, it's not like people own just 1 or 2 acres. It's like hectares of land, right? How do you even monitor them physically? It's impossible, right? There's livestock trying to gaze in and things like that. So with the help of these remote devices, which are very easy to operate, if a person can operate a mobile phone, which these days everybody, even in villages, does, right? It's as simple as that. So being able to monitor or even to spray fertilizers, chemicals, and monitor crops, I think it's a great technology, IoT. Another interesting use case of AI is bringing down operational costs through AI. I mean, it sounds like a hi-fi stuff, but then imagine there's an organization which has about, say, 10 floors, right? Not all 10 floors are meant for office workers. So there could be 2 or 3 floors where you have these floor workers in a manufacturing setup or a line setup, right? So there, the level of temperature or the degree of temperature that is needed is different from what is needed for a back office or a front office. Imagine if somebody who is sitting at the central air cooling system trying to, set it up manually. I don't think it's going to be very efficient, right? Because it also depends on the outside temperature. So if there is an AI system that is installed, and that could centrally control the temperature for each of these floors depending on your external temperature. Imagine how much the cost could come down. It would always maintain the optimal temperature in each of the floors depending on what the outside weather is. If it's raining, if it's really sunny, cloudy. So I think that brings down operational cost by a lot, right? And that is where organizations could think of investing in trying to cut down day-to-day cost, right? I think there are innumerable use cases that I could go on. Before I conclude, just one last use case, right? And this is my personal experience. In the current organization, we have about 90,000 employees, and on an annual basis, there is something called as member satisfaction assessment program, right? Where each member has to reply to, say, 10 or 13 different questions and rate the organization 1 to 10 for each of the questions. And in the end, there is something called as comment section. And throughout these years, people would rate 1 to 13 question on a scale of 1 to 10. So, I mean, the organization would just conclude saying, okay, these are the ratings for the 13 questions, and that is about it. But they always ignored the comment section, because comments is where the employees would actually put their realistic thoughts about the company, and to manually sit and collate 90,000 employees comments is something that is impossible, right? So it kept getting ignored until one fine day, somebody woke up and said, hey, why don't we make use of AI? And they came up with something called as a sentiment analysis tracker, or some fancy name. But what it does behind the scene is they have these neural networks, or these large language models that they use for AI to evaluate each of these comments. And now they're able to say, out of these 90,000 comments, based on the sentiment behind the language, it is able to say, okay, there is a 60% satisfaction, and 20% of your employees are neutral, remaining 20% are, they don't have a great feeling about the organization and things like that. So the organization can probably just focus on the 20% and see how they can, try to improve the employee sentiment better. So that is one classic recent use case of AI that I have seen. So I think these technologies are endless and the use cases are also endless, and sky is the limit if you can think in that direction.
Absolutely, Ms. Prithvi. And thank you for sharing such amazing insights into different subjects. So this brings us to the last question of the session. We are building a community of industry magnates. The move is meant for cross-pollination of knowledge and building a knowledge-sharing community of corporate giants and industry experts. So what are your thoughts about these initiatives taken by Mr. Zishan Pathan, Mr. Hebal Mehta, and the team of World Development Corporation?
Right. I think, I just have fantastic thoughts about this initiative. The reason being, so the way I've spent about 25 odd minutes today sharing my inputs or thoughts about the industry that I come from, right? I have seen quite a few videos of similar industry magnets coming from a different, totally unrelated industry that I have not much idea about, right? And when I hear about their contributions and how they've played an important role and the kind of background that they come from, the learnings that they have to share, I think there is so much to learn and network, especially, right? So I've even reached out to some people whose videos I've watched on this Industry Magnates channel just to be able to connect with them. And I think this opportunity gives you the chance to interact with similar like-minded people or even well-versed people, because these people have like 3 or 4 decades of experience, some of them, right? Which is like irreplaceable through bookish knowledge or how much ever you read up. I think the personal interaction that you can get and the knowledge that you can get through these interactions, I think is great. So I think this initiative really opens up the doors for more such opportunities, is what I can say.
Great, great. It was fantastic conversing with you, and I'm confident that your insights will inspire future leaders. Thank you, Ms.Pruthvi Basavesh, for joining us today, and we wish you the best for your future endeavors. Moreover,
Thank you so much
does
for
that
the
this
opportunity.
initiative by Directors Institute has unquestionably expanded the participants' understanding and enriched their minds.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you and have a nice day.